I've spent a lifetime trying to tie the perfect Catskill fly, and I haven't tied one yet, that's for sure. When I think of the great tires of the past, the Darbys, the Deddies, Art Flick, Fran Betters up in Wilmington, New York, who tied just stunning Catskill style flies in his younger days, I just feel ashamed. It's that simple. I think about these flies in almost religious terms. They're sacred to me. I am at the very least completely obsessed with them. I'll never tie a perfect one of these, and I know it. But we'll give it another go here, and who knows, maybe this time one will pan out. Let's talk about hooks for just a second. In the early days in the Catskills, in the 30s, 40s, etc., maybe even into the 50s, Allcock hooks which were made in England, were basically what was used, although Ray Bergman had his own Nyack brand of dry fly hook. Right now in the vise, I've got a Tiemco 100 standard dry fly hook of today. The hooks I grew up tying on with this hook here, which is a Mustad Viking 94840. And as you can see, it's got a considerably shorter shank, and the gap is nowhere as wide, and it's closer to a modern day 15. That's what I grew up with. They were the premium hook of the day, and they were fine. That said, if you look at old Allcocks and Ray Bergman Nyacks and compare them to that, they actually have a longer shank, as does this Tiemco hook here. The only real difference between this hook and some of the older, very traditional hooks that were used is this hook is shinier. The old hooks were bronzed, and in that way they were better. But at this point in my career, I've gotten used to the Tiemco hooks. They're great hooks, and that's what I personally use when I tie a Catskill fly in this day and age. If you want to be a little more traditional, try to find some of the 94840s. They're still around, and use those. They're wonderful hooks as well. And in my day, we thought they were the greatest. They're not chemically sharpened, but the barbs look great. It's interesting to note that Harry Darby tied his Catskill flies on an Allcock hook that was one size smaller than the traditional. So he would tie a size 14 fly on a size 15 hook, making it appear smaller than the competition, which many fishermen liked. Another argument for the Mustads. Art Flick suggests Pearsall's gossamer silk thread. I suggest any black thread you can buy in a fly shop. This hook is a size 14, by the way. I've taken the thread to the halfway point and then forward 6 turns, which should give me the 30% mark on the hook. I'm just checking it here for fun. I never check it, to be honest. And sure enough, it's at the 30% mark. Exactly. I want to show you a wood duck flank feather that's not a good one to use. The top is too curved. The stem extends too high, and Yes, you can make it work, and I've made many such feathers work. This is a much better feather. The stem extends much lower. The top is not as rounded, it's flatter. And we'll get rid of this stuff on the sides, the short stuff, and this should work beautifully. There are lots of ways to deal with this. A lot of the guys just put it on as a clump. I like to fold it, as I'm showing here. Fold it in two, and I'll fold it, and I'll measure it. And I want the length to be about hook length. And now I'll flip it over. And this may be in my head, but this seems to work better if I flip it over like this. And don't ask me why. But I've tried it both ways, and it seems to work a little better this way. I use an elevated pinch so that I can see the exact tie-in point. I want to get this precisely at the 30% mark. It doesn't always happen. Just work with what you have. Dave Brandt, a great Catskill tyer for years, he's deceased, always cut the butts off abruptly. Didn't taper them. Typically, I put the tail on first, and so I do a tapered cut there. But in this instance, I'm trying to do it like a real Catskill fly would have been done. So I put the wing on first here. Right now I'm dividing the fibers. I take one turn front to back and one turn back to front, getting ready to do a figure eight. I don't particularly like doing a figure eight, but since about 99% of the tyers out there do a figure eight to achieve the wing split, I'll do a figure eight here. I'm going around the far feather, like so. And now I'm going around the near feather. And at no time am I going underneath the hook with the thread. But I am trying to keep the thread low. If you get the thread a little too high and then add a little too much tension, it can pull like the far wing out of whack, out of position. So there's what it looks like with a figure eight, and that is a classic Catskill wing. I don't do them that way. I like a little more flat surface showing. I don't like them to be as narrow as the classic Catskills, so I'll show you my technique. I just go right up the near wing with 3 or 4 wraps front to back. Typically I do 3. I don't know why in the world I did 4 there. Back to front, I'll do 3 going up the far wing. And a couple wraps in front and some behind. And this gives me just a little wider profile, which I personally like. But it's not traditional. The figure eight is the traditional way to do it. Take the thread back to the bend, no further. Getting ready to tie in a tail that'll consist of between 6 and 8 stiff hackle barbs. Coq de Leon's the best, or whiting tailing packs. Measure it, and then cut the butts so that they match up with the cliff that was formed when you cut the wing butts off. And we're going to try to get this to taper nicely up. Notice I rolled that tail up. Every Catskill tire that I know rolls that tail on. Very few use a pinch there. Bind it down and leave the thread well short of the tail. That was a mistake I made there. That's an old habit that is killing me every time I do it. These are some bleached, this is a bleached peacock eye that I bleached the other day. I'll show how to do that in another video. I'll link to it below. Notice I'm going to tie this on the far side of the hook, and there's a black stripe on this, a black edge, and I want that down. Now this can be tied in different ways. This is just one way of doing it. But you want the black edge to trail as you wind this. The stripped Herl is fragile, so I'll wind the first couple of turns by hand, letting the Herl slip through my fingers as I do it. Then I'll put the hackle pliers on. We want to wind this to just short of the wings. And now we'll bind it down. I like to trap it. And we'll get ready to put the hackle on. The hackle should always be from a neck, and typically the far barbs are stripped off a little more than the near barbs. If you look at what I've done there. That assures a clean start for your turns of hackle. I also like the stem long, and I bind it, as you can see, I bind it in back of the wings and in front, so it won't pull out under any circumstances. Right here, I'm just evening things up a little bit. I don't want a big taper in the front. It'll make the hackle easier to wind if I get it as flat as I can get it there. Take a lot of time getting started. If you get it started right, usually it'll flow pretty well. And wind until the front wing starts to tilt forward. Then pull everything back and do a turn right in front of them, those wings. Get as many of these fibers pulled back as you wind as you can. This hackle's not cooperating, and sometimes they don't. I'm going to try to get one more turn. This hackle's medium done. A lot of tires prefer dark done on this fly. And this one I'm going to tie off underneath, just the way this is worked out. And that way the final turn is a complete turn as well, which I like to do on Catskill flies. There are times where I'll bind the hackle down on top of the shank as well. I do it both ways. It probably has more to do with my mood than anything else. Took a few turns back, and now I'm going to do a whip finish headed forward. Typically, I've only done a 3-turn whip finish on Catskill style flies. You can do more if you like. And here's the final fly. We won't call it perfect, but it's decent, and it'll fish for sure. The wings are higher than the hackle, but not a lot higher. Wings that are too high just don't fish as far as I'm concerned. The fly tips over and lands on its face. Well, I felt dirty after that one. So here's a better one. It's just about perfect. I would have liked to have had the wing maybe just a touch shorter, and maybe the hackle just a touch longer. There's always a little something. But I like it. It's okay. Not perfect.